Humans are brilliant, well, some of us are. To think we evolved from chimpanzees and through natural selection, and thousands of years, we've come to what we are today. That is pretty remarkable. Yeah, there are some humans who do let the side down. I'm looking at you, evil dictators that cause huge suffering and war. But early humans began to learn at speed, picking up ways of sustaining populations for thousands of years to come. Today in this lesson on History of the World, we look at those early societies in the Neolithic period, also known as the New Stone Age. Remember, confirm your attendance by clicking subscribe down below. It really does help. The Neolithic period, also known as the New Stone Age, centres around humans beginning to be more settled. During this time, humans learned how to do different things, such as farm, which has helped sustain the population and species today. They also began to come up with more sophisticated tools, which made their lives a lot easier, and typically the Neolithic period is said to have taken place between 7000 BCE and 1700 BCE. Now, the big one, farming. I'm sure a lot of your family are farmers out there. The beginning of agriculture. After the end of the last ice age, with the rising temperatures, humans switched from being just hunter-gatherers to become a lot more domesticated. They raised animals, and this first took place around 8500 BCE in countries such as Turkey and Syria, typically fertile lands. The hot dry summers and the wet and cool winters allowed for different farming techniques to then be developed. The first plants were cultivated also, and first used were cereals or barley. So when you took into your cornflakes in the morning, you can thank people thousands of years ago for perfecting them techniques to make them. Around this time too, animals became domesticated. Now, the first animal that became domesticated, any ideas? Yes, the goat. Goats. Then next came the sheep, pigs, cows, and then cattle. Humans realised somehow that animals were a good source of meat, milk, and other animal products. But I wouldn't like to ask the question as to how the first human discovered that milk came from a cow's udder. What on earth was that man doing when he found that out? Around 7000 BCE, different agricultural societies became slightly troubled and stressed because their populations grew. They were obviously doing the right thing. Some of these settlements became abandoned, and this led to people spreading their wings and travelling to new places to begin and farm there and also raise animals all over the world. This caused the spread of farming, which reached southeastern Europe around 6500 BCE, and then within 1000 years it had spread thousands of miles. But us Brits were a little bit later to the party, as farming came here around 3500 BCE, over 5500 years ago. Farming continued to spread like a glorious common cold, and it reached India and Asia, and even in Asia, an economy based on rice emerged. The kings and queens of farming though throughout the past were probably the ancient Egyptians, as fortunately for them, they had the River Nile that helped irrigate the fields, and the harvest could feed a whole population with relative ease. But with the developments in farming, people began to settle down and create permanent settlements, villages where they lived in mud houses. By the year 8000 BCE, Jericho in the Jordan Valley had become a small walled town, and the people that lived in houses there had stone foundations and floors which were plastered, and people were actually buried under their homes when they died. Imagine that, grandma buried underneath the kitchen floor. Scary. Other settlements emerged too in countries such as Turkey, and they prospered from trade based on local resources which were discovered. People also began to visit other settlements and begin to trade, and they would pay for goods for the first time. Catalhayuk, which has been found, is one of the most important sites from this period. Found in southeastern Turkey, it was inhabited 9000 years ago by around 8000 people who lived together in a big town. This town in particular saw a transition from just hunting to farming and developing skills with animal domestication. Catalhayuk had no streets or paths, and the houses were built right next to each other, and people walked over the rooftops to get to their homes, and they climbed in them through a hole in the roof, a bit like Santa Claus coming down your chimney at Christmas. There were communal ovens too, where people would cook, but yet again the dead were buried under the floors of the houses, and sometimes even schools were taken and were plastered over to make them look as if the people who died were actually alive. I'd imagine it'd be like a trip to Madame Tussauds, the waxworks in London. Many pieces of art, such as figures, have been found at Catalhayuk. Decorations were found on the walls and on the platforms too, and many of these show animals and the world around them. So yeah, incredible stuff that they were doing thousands of years ago. But then came a big one. Humans found metal for the first time. For a long time, people made tools from stone, wood, and even animal bones. But then around 7000 BCE, copper began to be used in tools. They were to begin with axe heads and beads, but then using different techniques, very clever humans realised that they could make copper into different items, such as even jewellery. But who wants a copper necklace today when you can have gold or silver? Gold began to be used around 5000 BCE and was initially used in decoration and also in rituals, and by this time humans had begun to become experts at metalworking. But then around the year 3500 BCE, some clever clogs realised that by mixing copper and tin together, then they could create something better, bronze. This alloy was more durable and was then used to create weapons, armour, tools and other things too, including Olympic medals. This gave rise to the Bronze Age. Now in Britain, we were late to the party yet again with bronze, as in Europe there was already a Bronze Age in full swing. Different groups of people would make incredible things, such as the Mycenaeans, and more on them later, and they would even begin to trade with other groups such as the Minoans, and more on these chaps and chapettes coming up later too, featuring the Minotaur. Right, there's the bell, the end of another glorious lesson. I hope you've enjoyed this look at the Neolithic period and the first human settlements. If you're not interested in this, it will get more interesting later, I promise. Your homework question today is, what animal has had the biggest impact on human life today? Comment your answer down below in the comments section. Once again, thanks for watching History of the World. Do click subscribe down below, it really does help. Next lesson we're going to look at something really different and something interesting too, megaliths. And yeah, thanks for watching and welcome to the History of the World, your brand new classroom all about history on YouTube.